Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
We consider the fallout politically and legally of the second deadly ICE shooting in Minneapolis. Judge Catherine Menendez today is considering the state's urgent request by way of a lawsuit to end ICE's so-called Operation Metro Surge and take the agents out of town. Minnesota officials filed that lawsuit around the time of Renee Good's death, which is, of course, a couple of weeks now. There's a tandem lawsuit, a separate lawsuit that Judge Eric Tostrad is weighing in Minnesota. Law enforcement's lawsuit requiring the Trump administration to preserve evidence stemming from the shooting over this past weekend, the shooting of Mr. Preddy. And to that end, there are multiple reports now as of the lunch hour today on the East Coast that several federal agents had their body cameras on during the fatal shooting that took place on Saturday. In fact, now DHS is reviewing that camera video from the Preddy shooting, according to those sources. Knowing that the president himself said in a very brief interview with the Wall Street Journal, I guess they got him on the phone for about 5 minutes, that, quote, "We are looking, we're reviewing everything, and we'll come out with a determination." Asked whether the officer who shot Alex Preddy had done the right thing, he provided no answer. But a short time ago, the president on Truth Social updating the story once again. And I'll note that we don't know if we're going to be hearing from or seeing the president directly today. He's got a number of events on the schedule, but so far, at least, they are all closed press. This post, as of last hour, reads, Governor Tim Walz called me with the request to work together with respect to Minnesota. President says it was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz I would have Tom Homan call him. That's his border czar he's referring to. And what that we're looking for, any all criminals that they have in their possession. Tom Homan, according to the president earlier today on social media, will be making his way to Minneapolis by the end of the day. And before we get to the political fallout with regard to government funding and now a likely government shutdown at the end of the week, we want to update things with Bloomberg's Washington correspondent Tyler Kendall, who's got her eyes on everything coming out of the administration. Tyler, we should note press secretary is scheduled to deliver a briefing this hour. What else can you tell us?
Right. And no doubt, Joe, Caroline Leavitt is going to be asked questions about the potential political fallout here and what the White House's actions are going to look like going forward, because you mentioned that call between President Trump and Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz, which is considered to be pretty significant in the fact that they hadn't had contact ahead of this. And the president did indicate that they do intend to hold another call down the line, perhaps signaling that there is going to be more cooperation here when it comes to state, federal, and local law enforcement, because there are a whole lot of different threads that we could pull on. You mentioned that we are closely tracking this court case in Minneapolis. We can confirm that that hearing has ended, but without a ruling. And at this point, we don't know what that timeline is going to look like to get a ruling on whether or not ICE will be expelled from Minneapolis, which means that at this point, all eyes are on the administration as they face this mounting pressure to act in some accord. Now, you did mention we got some perhaps signals last night that President Trump would perhaps move towards a more de-escalation stance, considering he said that they were reviewing this, which seemed to be in opposition to some of the initial remarks that we heard from administration officials over the weekend, including the DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. But Joe, of course, at the heart of this is the fact that Tom Homan is going over. That is seen as a de-escalation tactic in a way. He operates separately from the DHS Secretary. He is in his own silo. And of course, DHS has been overseeing these operations that are out there on the ground.
Yeah. Tyler, thank you so much. Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall with the Washington and administration side of this story. And I suspect we'll hear more with Caroline Leavitt set to brief any moment now. This is what we heard from officials in Minneapolis and Minnesota over the weekend. Listen.
The world knows how he died. He died at the hands of ICE agents on the streets of Minneapolis. And I call on all Americans to see the decency that this state is exhibiting and the horrific cruelty, unprofessional absolute abomination that is passing for what these ICE agents are doing on our streets.
If we don't stop this behavior here, it will only expand, and it won't be good for anyone in our country.
Our officers are tired, our businesses are tired, and this additional support is necessary. And again, the chaos that we are seeing is caused directly by ICE, Border Control, and this federal administration.
Governor Tim Walz, Attorney General Keith Ellison, Mayor Jacob Frey. Wendy Benjaminson was working over the course of the weekend as our senior Washington editor as all of this unfolded, and joins us now with her eyes on the administration and, of course, the state capitol in Minnesota. Wendy, it's great to have you with us here. The president says he's on the phone with Tim Walz this morning. Similar wavelength. Is this evolving again before our eyes based on the pushback that the president's been hearing?
I think it is, and it sort of begs the question of what would have happened if he'd called Tim Walz a month ago and said, hey, thinking about coming up there, can we work this out? And maybe that would have saved Renee Good and Alex Preddy. This has been extraordinary, and I think, as we know, Trump is a huge has a huge appetite for social media. He is on it all the time. That means he cannot escape the videos that we are all seeing. And he is seeing this go down. He is having, even the Republicans who aren't saying anything publicly, we believe are calling him and saying, look, you better turn the temperature down. This is going out of control. And then we hear last night that he's going to review the evidence. And just before I came on, I saw that after Trump said we are reviewing the evidence, DHS says they now have a body cam video of the shooting.
Yes.
So we will see that now. So they will review the evidence. He sent Tom Homan up there to sort of take some control over the situation. We don't know right now whether that will calm things down or make them worse, although Tim Walz seems to welcome it. And then you have the possibility that they'll just pull out of Minnesota entirely.
Mm-hmm. I have to be honest, I'm not sure I understand what sending Tom Homan is going to do here, Wendy. The border's closed. This is the president's border czar. What's he going to be doing in Minneapolis?
Well, I think he trusts Tom Homan very much. There has been scuttlebutt, but it's only scuttlebutt that, he may not be happy with the way Kristi Noem is running things. He may not be happy with Greg Bovino. Yeah. He is that border control commandant who walks around in the military garb and has become sort of the unpopular face of this. So it may be that there's a guy, Tom Homan, whom he trusts, who can get up there, be his eyes and ears, and tell him just how bad it really is. And if Homan meets with Walz and Frey and Ellison, then maybe some reason will prevail at some point.
Wendy, thank you for the insights. As we consider the voices in the administration, including the aforementioned Greg Bovino, who Wendy mentions, there were a lot of folks out doing social media, doing Sunday morning television. Here's a sense of what we heard.
An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol agents with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The agents attempted to disarm the individual, but he violently resisted. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, a Border Patrol agent fired defensive shots.
This individual showed up to impede a law enforcement operation and assaulted our officers. They responded according to their training and took action to defend the officer's life and those of the public around him. And I don't know of any peaceful protester that shows up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign.
That was Secretary Kristi Noem there following Greg Bovino. Kristi Noem saying without evidence that Preddy was there to, quote, massacre law enforcement, unquote. We add the voice now of Robert McWhirter, the constitutional lawyer practicing criminal defense, civil rights attorney. Robert, it's great to have you with us once again on Bloomberg TV and radio. I'm just wondering your thoughts on this most recent revelation. They have at least one, and it might be several, body cameras that were being worn by federal agents. Will they matter in this case? Because they did not seem to matter in the last one.
Oh, I think they most certainly will matter. And the difference in the Renee Good case from this one is the videos are even more stark about what occurred here.
And to be clear, Robert, that was cell phone video in that first case. This is actual body cameras they were apparently wearing, right?
Well, body cameras from the officers, but you've got the cell phone videos of other people around. And, you can't, if you're Kristi Noem, I mean, if I was her lawyer, I'd say, look, you can't lie your way out of this one. You have the videos. And I've thought a long time, like, what is a better thing for protecting rights? Is it our Constitution and Bill of Rights, or is it our cell phones? It might be our cell phones under this particular regime.
Wow.
Because if you see what happened there, it is just shocking. It was an execution of an American citizen who was standing there. There was no reason to go beyond that. I'll also add another point. When Secretary Noem states that there's no reason to bring a firearm to a protest, well, what did they say during Kyle Rittenhouse when that young man went fully armed and killed 2 Black Lives Matter protesters? They weren't saying the same thing about that. They say we have a Second Amendment right to bear arms. This man did not brandish it. He did not pull it. And he did not deserve to be killed by an ICE agent.
Execution is the word that you chose there. Would that suggest, if proven, that officer be charged with murder? Because J.D. Vance says ICE agents have absolute immunity.
J.D. Vance is wrong. And I think he supposedly had law training. He should know better. No, federal agents, including ICE agents, have a qualified immunity for the conduct of their federal duties and while they're doing their federal duties. That does not give them immunity from a homicide charge. And I will tell you, there is no statute of limitation for a homicide charge. So you don't have the right to then violate the Constitution, barge into people's homes, and do what ICE agents are doing. And realize this was preceded by several assaults against women who were being pushed down by the ICE officers. So really, that is just simply wrong. You cannot say that committing the killing of a protester is within your official duties. But if you say that, then I think we're all lost.
Interesting language from Mr. Bovino as well, who talked about the law enforcement, in fact, as victims here. Good job for our law enforcement in taking him down before he was able to do that, referring to the massacre of law enforcement that was being alleged. Bovino said Preddy injected himself into an active law enforcement scene. Robert, that's what we've been hearing from a number of members of the administration, that by way of blocking the officers' work, the protesters are voluntarily putting themselves in danger. How would you react to that?
Well, everybody has a right to protest. What this man was doing is he had his camera up and he was videoing what the agents are doing, right. And you have a perfect right to do that. Also, the person who unholstered this man's gun was another ICE agent. He never pulled his gun. Mm-hmm. He may have had it strapped to him, but he never pulled the gun. It was an ICE agent who did it just before another ICE agent, and it looks like shot him in the back of the head. So, you can't lie your way when you have video evidence. And I think that's what this case really comes down to. And look, this is just absurd. I need to say one thing. ICE agents are enforcing immigration law. For the majority, immigration law is a civil violation. You know what else is a civil violation? A traffic ticket. So now you have people in full military regalia enforcing civil violations. It's performative, it's a big show, and it's dangerous. And frankly, they're not even deporting as many people as the Biden administration and the Obama administration did. So they're incompetent at the very job they're saying they're doing.
I want to clarify this Second Amendment issue while you're with us, Robert, and this has been very helpful for us to clear some things up. We heard a lot about the Second Amendment over the weekend. To your point, it appears in the video that he was disarmed by one of the agents. So it was legal for him to be carrying this as a licensed gun owner with a carry permit here. But the fact that these were federal officers, does the presence of ICE at any level supersede the Second Amendment in the way that he acted yesterday in carrying, or Saturday, carrying that weapon?
Absolutely not. The Second Amendment applies. Well, when the Second Amendment was first written, it applied directly to the federal government and not the state governments. We have since expanded our understanding of the Bill of Rights, so it applies to state government as well. But being a federal agent doesn't mean you have the right to violate people's constitutional rights, and it doesn't mean that you can violate the right to bear arms. Now, if you want to say that there should be greater gun regulation, well, then that's a different discussion. But then I think you're going to have to call upon the National Rifle Association to come in and say, oh, okay, we're going to allow for more gun regulation to prevent this from happening. And they seem pretty quiet right now in this situation.
Really interesting. Robert, I really appreciate it. I'd love to call on you again this week as we learn more about these two cases before the state. Robert McWhirter with us from Maricopa County in Arizona, our constitutional law expert, criminal defense attorney with us here on Balance of Power. I'm Joe Mathieu in Washington. We'll assemble our political panel next. Now that we've set the baseline on what has happened, not from over the weekend only, but today as well, the president's call with Tim Walz. We'll get the read on this from Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis, Bloomberg Politics contributors. They're up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Stay with us on Balance of Power. We'll have much more coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
Thank you for joining us on this Monday on Bloomberg TV and radio. Presumably curled up somewhere warm. I hope that's the case for you. With an ice-ensconced nation, at least 2/3 of the country hit by that storm over the weekend. And we're still looking at, of course, hundreds of thousands of power outages. We'll get an update a little bit later on from Bloomberg's Miles Miller, who's in downtown New York. In fact, he's been in Central Park looking at the response from city officials and what was, of course, a major early challenge for Zoran Mamdani. We've got our eyes on the White House as well today, following the second deadly shooting by an ICE agent in Minneapolis. It took place over the weekend. As you can see on Bloomberg TV and on YouTube, Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, just began her briefing at the White House in what is a room full, even with the weather here shutting down the federal government. It does appear we have some mixed messages coming from the administration. Karoline Leavitt saying a short time ago, quote, Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have shamefully blocked local and state policy from cooperating with ICE, actively inhibiting efforts to arrest violent criminals, encouraged agitators to stalk, record, and confront federal officials, creating dangerous situations. Obstructing federal law enforcement and inciting violence against officers is wrong and illegal. She says they've used their platforms to encourage left-wing agitators, and saying this only an hour roughly after President Trump went to Truth Social to describe a phone call he had today with Governor Tim Walz. He writes on social media, Governor Walz called me with a request to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call, the president says, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. That does not sound like what we're hearing from the press secretary as we attempt to rationalize these two lines of thinking, knowing as well that it is expected the government could be facing a partial shutdown by the end of this week because of not only Democrat but Republican pushback on what took place over the weekend. The fact is you need 60 votes in the Senate, and getting a DHS bill, which is, by the way, combined with other spending bills in a minibus, is not going to reach that threshold as Chuck Schumer demands the bills be split apart and DHS be addressed on its own. It's where we start our conversation with our political panel. Bloomberg Politics contributors Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis are with us. Jeannie is our Democratic analyst and democracy visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. Rick is a partner at Stone Court Capital, our Republican strategist. Jeannie, have Democrats decided to shut down half the government on Friday?
Yeah, I think it's very clear from what Schumer and all Democrats that we've heard from so far have said is that they hope that the Republicans split this, take out the one bill with the DHS in it, pass the others, and then negotiate or work on what is going to go forward in terms of DHS, because they simply cannot now fund this thing. They are hearing from their constituents. It is loud and clear. People were for many millions of people in this country this weekend watching these horrific videos out of Minneapolis. And I think if anybody thought there was unification on the part of Democrats over healthcare to shut down, this is something I don't think we've seen in a long time. They are widely unified. They've got some Republicans who may come over. So I think we are looking for a partial shutdown, unless, of course, John Thune decides that he's going to, that there's a deal to be had here and that they break this thing apart and work on revamping DHS.
Well, for starters, I'm just struck, to both of you, by just the extreme nature in which the entire political landscape changed between Friday and a Monday. It is incredible the impact that this second shooting has had over the funding debate. Rick, you spent a lot of time in the Senate. Is it realistic for Chuck Schumer to talk about pulling all of these spending bills apart? Because even if they do, the House isn't here. They'd have to come back. They won't be around likely till next week, and the government shuts down anyway, right?
Yeah, obviously his focus is on the Department of Homeland Security, ripping that out of the minibus. And I think he's got plenty of support within a Democratic caucus to do it. It's kind of a gift handed to him by the Republican administration saying, hey, we're right about to have a opportunity to finally get this budget done without a shutdown. And we're going to create a scene in Minneapolis that'll be so extreme that even you can't say yes to the deal you've already said yes to. So, yeah, this is a problem. And the administration, has created this problem for itself. Even Republicans aren't prepared to walk the plank for DHS. You can count on two hands Republican senators who have said we need a immediate investigation, state and local people involved. Right. That, we're trampling on the rights of, core values of the American citizens' right to protest. There's very little support right now, even on the Republican side, for not doing something dramatic to sort of give a message to DHS that we can't have these kinds of things happening anymore. So, even though Republicans aren't prepared to vote against it, they need Democrats in the Senate to pass this omnibus, and they're not going to get it. So, the next worst thing is Republicans are going to be in the House on leave while this is going on and aren't going to stop and come back right away to try and fund the government. They're going to go ahead and finish out the week, let the government expire, and then get around to it later on. So American public is not going to feel well served this week.
And it's only been a couple of weeks since the last shutdown, Jeannie. How quickly we forget. I had to chuckle. The tip sheets all pointing out the fact that it is not news when Tom Tillis or Lisa Murkowski push back on the president. But some of the other names that we've been seeing, Bill Cassidy is suddenly the poster child. Not that he's very happy with Donald Trump as being primaried by the president, but the Republican from Louisiana writes on social media, the events in Minneapolis are incredibly disturbing. The credibility of ICE and DHS are at stake. There must be a full joint federal and state investigation. He was echoed by Andrew Garbarino in the House, Jeannie. This is the chair of the Homeland Security Committee who was on with us last week, asking for the heads of ICE, Customs, and Border Protection to testify before his committee. You've even got James Comer suggesting ICE leave Minnesota. We'll look back on this, I guess, as a turning point, Jeannie, but I'm not sure what we're turning to. Do you?
That's right. And I was just going to mention James Comer went on Fox News. And if you look at the more conservative media, I'm just looking at the New York Post here where I am, and they have a headline now saying Trump snubs Kristi Noem, who they call iced Barbie. And their point is, of course, along with a big story on Comer on Fox News, that there is, if you look from the Washington Examiner and some of these other more conservative outlets, they are reporting on these people who are calling the administration to task. And what's so baffling is to hear the press secretary right now in the room with reporters blaming Democrats not more than an hour after the president took to Truth Social and tried to walk this thing back. And this has been a theme with this administration. They simply cannot get out of their own way. They had a big victory here with closing down the border on an issue that got them the White House, and yet they have done everything they can at this point to disrupt that. And Republicans in Congress are not going to walk the plank for the administration on this. So a very difficult time for the president. And by the way, none of this was hard. We're really sorry this happened. Let's have an investigation. Let's work with local officials. These are things that are said all the time. And yet instead they went on the air this weekend calling victims, suspects, calling them assassins and terrorists. I mean, it's utterly inexplicable from a messaging standpoint or from any common sense standpoint for this administration.
Well, I'm compelled by the business side of this, Rick Davis. We can talk about outrage among politicians all day long here, and there'll be more where that came from. But it's not every day you see a letter like this. 60 chief executive officers from Minnesota-based companies calling on the president to de-escalate tensions between state, local, and federal authorities, knowing that, of course, we have a real standoff here on a government level. We're talking about Best Buy, Target, Cargill, General Mills, United Health. We're also talking about sports teams. The Minnesota Vikings and Timberwolves are on here. This was shared by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. Is this what's moving the president, Rick Davis?
You know, I think all these things are starting to maybe get his attention. You can't avoid the impact that all of this is having on the people in Minnesota, and the impact economically to the community. I mean, the city and state are shut down, and that was the intent. The administration makes no bones about it. They're going to go to these quote sanctuary cities, and they're going to root out these illegals who are supposedly causing all this trouble in the community. Except in these communities, there wasn't that much trouble, and the federal officers who are there are creating so much disruption that it's impeding the flow of commerce. It's keeping people, at home, away from their schools and their churches. It's just phenomenal, the impact on these communities, and so the administration is getting what they asked for. I think someone needs to actually start talking to Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff. Is the first one to call Preddy a terrorist. And in any other administration, there would be people from his own party calling for his head today. But in this administration, they throw so much out there that you don't know which atrocity to react to.
30 seconds, Jeannie. Representative Robin Kelly, a Democrat, of course, has articles of impeachment for Kristi Noem. 120 Democrats have signed on. Is that going anywhere?
I don't know if the impeachment is going to go anywhere, but Donald Trump looks like he is about to take action potentially. I mean, just the movement of Tom Homan up there. And Tom Homan and Kristi Noem and Lewandowski have been at odds for a while. So I think he knows how bad this is.
Jeannie reminds us Tom Homan is making tracks directed by the president to Minneapolis. Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis, thank you both so much. Great analysis at a very difficult moment.
Stay with us on Balance of Power. We'll have much more coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
Gold and silver.
Exactly.
Things are getting pretty old-fashioned around here, Charlie. I love it.
Yeah, and what's amazing, Joe Mathieu, quick anecdote. I had an ounce of silver that I've been sitting in a drawer at home for decades, literally decades. I suspect I bought this ounce for $5 back in the 80s, and I was like, how do you get rid of an ounce of, how do I monetize this? What do? I walked into a pawn shop, P-A-W-N, a pawn shop, and managed to sell it there.
I've heard of those.
And you know what they gave me? $86. Spot gold right now.
$86.
$86. Spot right now trading at $116. I didn't know how to monetize it.
This is awesome. Was that in the city? I just have to know. Like, did you cross the street from work into a pawn shop, drop the silver?
I happened to go. I was walking past a pawn shop in my neighborhood, and that's where I decided to unload it.
Great. Did you see my guitar? while you were there?
They got a lot of guitars in the window. Exactly.
Right. I know, they always do.
And I'm surprised you didn't get one from your rock and roll buddy a couple of weeks ago.
PAWN.
Pawn. Yep,
Thank you,
Pawn.
Charlie.
My pleasure.
You're a great American. Is that the best thing you ever heard? Sorry if you're sleeping on the floor at the airport, man. I'll tell you what. Maybe you got into the lounge. You know, they've just been canceling flights around the country because of this thing. And when you look at the totals, I did sell us short earlier. Producer James set me straight on this. We got 7 inches at the airport here. That's, they go with the airport as the official total. 6.9. Dulles, that was as of midnight, by the way. Dulles ended up with about 8. BWI with the jackpot over 11 inches. So between 7 and a foot is kind of where we are here. Again, the snow is not so much the story. It's the ice, and that's why there was so much concern about power outages. If you look out the window here, there's a little bit of pavement, but not too much to be seen. They're still spending most of their time just sort of pushing snow around the nation's capital because there's nothing else to do. No one else is downtown. It's going to make it difficult for lawmakers to get in. 11.4 inches in Central Park, according to AccuWeather, and that is where we find the great Miles Miller. You know this is a banger of a storm when they put Miles in the winter outfit and station him in Central Park. This will be the best part of the program, I'm guessing. Miles, it's great to see you. The big question that we were asking on Friday is the mayor up to the test? What are they saying today in New York?
Listen, I'll tell you, high marks for the mayor, who was able to make sure that plows got down the streets they needed to get to and made sure that people were informed ahead of the storm. At the beginning of the de Blasio administration in 2014, he basically had to get rid of his sanitation commissioner because of what a bad job was done on the Upper East Side, which is, of course, where the mayor's mansion, Gracie Mansion, is. No problems thus far here. The only gripes are really from schools children who are doing remote learning today, but not too many, because behind me, well, those must be the private school kids, because they're doing some sledding behind me. Some of the private schools here in New York City are closed today, but not New York City schools. They are remote. And Joe, we're two people who spent some time on local news. I did not think that I'd be back covering storms once I joined Bloomberg, and it's a different world. Can you go out and cover the storm? Absolutely. We know you've done it before. Sure. Let me show. I got to do what we do in TV, right? Let me just show you the scene here in Central Park. People taking leisurely strolls. The children. I forgot radio as well, right? Children are sliding down the hills, and it is a beautiful sight to see here in Central Park. But beyond that, what we know is that nearly 3,900 flights were canceled as of 9 a.m. today. That follows roughly 11,600 cancellations since the start of the storm. And if you got some of this storm in D.C., it was nothing like what we got. I'll tell you about that. Rocking and rolling in the all-wheel drive Toyota Highlander today, doing the best we can, but it's really slick out there.
I don't know. This is very authentic, I've got to say, Miles. Just embrace it for one day. You look fantastic, and I appreciate the update very much.
Wait, hold on, Joe. So wait, hold on for the YouTube audience. Hold on. There's a bunch of people from all around the world behind. Come on over. Come. Oh, they're all. I don't think. Wow. There they are. There they are. They're slow. They're slow to move. But we've got
this. I love
from all over the world. I can tell. Big
Miles,
Bloomberg
this is
audience
an incredible
here.
Service. I just didn't want to make you late for your next hit. This is fantastic. Is Macaulay Culkin in that crowd? Are those the private school kids? Don't take any gruff from them. I know where they're from.
Listen, our tourism dollars at work, baby. I'll send it back to you. We got a $12.50.
Great job. Yeah, I love this. I don't want to get Miles fired today. Can we do that again next hour? That's just highlight of my day. Miles Miller in Central Park. Thank you. Born to be in a storm.
Thanks for listening to the Balance of Power podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already at Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find us live every weekday from Washington, D.C. at noontime Eastern at Bloomberg.com.